I could not see the AFCON ending in any other way than the drama that came down in Abidjan between Ivory Coast and Nigeria. Peter Okwoche is here. Mimi Fawaz will be joining us a bit later. We'll go into all those details in this episode. Welcome once again to the Africa Football Showdown. But Peter, what happened?
Oh, well, I mean, listen, first of all, I have to apologize for my absence from the show for the last few editions. But hey, I'm back, and that's all that matters, isn't it? Listen, man,
Yeah.
I mean, when Troost Ekong scored that first goal yesterday, Nigerians thought that cup was coming home. But the Ivorians had a different game plan. It was a masterful game plan by the Ivorians. You know, Nigeria were a bit too defensive, not attack-minded enough, and we couldn't understand that formation. Once the Ivorians had scored 2 goals, we changed our formation to a more attacking one, and people thought, well, that should have come earlier in the game. Even right after we scored our first game, Troost Ekong headed in that brilliant goal. We thought, okay, we'd become more attack-minded just to protect our goal. But I think the Ivorians had a different game plan, and they masterfully executed it on the pitch yesterday. Kudos to them. Kudos to them. The celebrations here in Nigeria, pretty muted. I've been monitoring them all through the night and all through the day, and they've been pretty muted. But a lot of people are giving the boys kudos, because at the beginning of the tournament, no one expected to see them in the final.
Look, I think that the boys deserve all the plaudits that they can get. I picked Nigeria to win this because I felt like they had found a system that worked for them, and they had stopped even the best of attacks, which is what surprised me about yesterday, conceding 2 goals. But again, I have to give props to, first of all, Adingra, and then Kessie and Ale there for breaking down the defense, because it wasn't the first time. If you look at the second goal, for instance, it wasn't the first time that Adingra had managed to enter through that left side and gotten across through, but it just seemed like there were too many bodies in the middle. It was such a beautiful flick, though, wasn't it, by Sebastian Ale?
Absolutely. And listen, right, I think like I said, the Ivorians had a game plan. If you go back to the group stages when Nigeria beat Ivory Coast 1-0, I think the Ivorians had watched Nigeria's first game against Equatorial Guinea, I think it was, where we drew 1-1 in that match, and then came into the match against Nigeria in the group stage thinking that we were going to play exactly the same way. But Nigeria changed their formation and played with a completely different formation. But I think the Ivorians had learned their lesson. So when they came into this final game, they were the ones who surprised the Nigerians. I thought Kessie was brilliant. I thought Hala was brilliant. I thought the whole team, I mean, the way they kept the ball, the way they passed the ball, all of a sudden, the Nigerian players could not retain the ball, and those are a lot of the complaints that people, where I watched the game, and then fans that I've been listening to on the radio since. These are some of the complaints that they had. They said, you guys could not retain the ball. You guys could not even string together 5-6 passes. I think, which was a shame. But it was a masterful performance by.
You've not been retaining the ball so much during the tournament, Peter. You've not been playing possessive football during the tournament. It's been more of sitting back and soaking the pressure.
So absolutely soaking up the pressure. But once we get on the move, if we're doing a counter attack or something, our passes were, crisp, sharp, went to the intended player. But this time, Iwobi, I know all of them. I mean, their passes were just short, completely out of place. They just looked like a team that were tired. They'd reached their peak or something, and they were completely tired, which was a huge surprise for such a game that they wanted to win.
Yeah, exactly. At a point, it seemed like Ivory Coast just wanted it more. And I am kind of taken aback by, even though, yes, the fairy tale works, but I'm really taken aback by the energy on the pitch, if anything. But what's next, really, for this Nigerian team?
Do you know what? That's a beautiful question because I mean, obviously, it's the end of tournaments or end of international football for players like Ahmed Musa, who was the captain of the team. But they've got some young players. Lookman was a bright star in the team. Osimhen was a bright star in the team. And I mean, they're going to continue to the next Africa Cup of Nations in Morocco, I think. But I think they will have to look at themselves. The coaching staff will have to look at themselves. Is this the right coaching staff that will move Nigeria forward? Jose Pesero was, some argue, lucky to have still retained his position and taken Nigeria to this tournament. Will he continue to the next tournament in Morocco? I personally doubt that very much. I think Nigeria will go looking for a new coach. It might be a homegrown coach. It might be an international coach. But I think he's taken this team as far as he can go. But for the players, I think the core of the team will still remain until the next tournament in Morocco.
I think that general tradition of defensive play is phasing out. And Nigeria, even though they showed a lot of defensive mettle in the tournament, also has a lot of attacking prowess that needs to be allowed to express themselves. It's sort
So,
of,
I mean,
a
you're
Ghana
right.
situation.
You're right about that. You're right about that because a lot of people were like, why was Iwobi playing so deep? Iwobi should have been the engine room of the team. He normally plays a bit higher up, almost like in a number 10 position. You know, he's the one who
Yeah.
sprays the passes, but he was playing almost a number 4, almost like a cover for the defense, you know, or holding midfielder kind of, you know, and Nigerians were a bit surprised by that. So it just, I think that stifled our creativity a little bit. And then the fact that at some point, even in the semi-finals against South Africa, you know, when we're finding them difficult to break down, I thought the coach might bring an Iheanacho in earlier on to play 2 attackers to now confuse the defense. But he didn't do that, you know. And a lot of the times in the final game on Sunday, you could see Osimhen was completely isolated. Completely isolated. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think he had a brilliant tournament. He just showed how much of a team player he was. He was recovering balls, going back into defense to go and play. He's a brilliant player, an all-round player. But in the final,
But on Osimhen, Peter, on Osimhen, 24 shots at goal in a tournament and 1 goal. Yes,
that's a very poor return.
yeah.
That's a very, very poor return. And I think, and see, and that's another problem with the coaching technical crew, because after that first game where we drew 1-1, I think that he should have been told, listen, your job in this tournament is to score goals. Stop tracking back. You know, you are number 9, stay in the number 9 position and let's look for you. You know, but at some point, during the tournament, I was seeing him recovering balls from the Nigerian defense. You know, that's not your job. And I think that's why his goal return in this tournament was so poor. But then his work rate was high.
I still really respect what he put in the game. I still really respect the role he played in drawing defenders and even tracking back and making sure that they would retain the goals. There's an expression that a good attack wins you games, but a good defense wins you titles. But are you satisfied overall with what he brought?
Listen, I can say no because his job was to score goals and he didn't. He scored only 1 goal. But you can't deny the man's work rate. The man's work rate was very high. But when it comes to goals returned, which is why he is in the team, then he didn't have the best of tournaments. You know, and not just him, the rest of the players. But then don't forget, I mean, he was the highest goal scorer coming into the tournament during the qualification phase of the tournament. You know, so for his goals to just dry up during the tournament was a huge surprise. But I think that's because he also tried to show what a team player he is. But strikers are meant to be selfish players, you know, play selfishly, bang in the goals.
But look, I mean, no matter how wild that game was, as a Ghanaian, I have to say, I'm not angry at the result at all. I mean, we still have 4 AFCONs. Nigeria still has 3. Ivory Coast also has 3. You know, and you know, I think that for world peace, because Nigerian people have been sitting on people's happiness.
Should I tell you the biggest story in Nigeria today? The biggest story in Nigeria today is that Nigerians were not even interested in the trophy. All they wanted to do was perform better than Ghana in the tournament and then beat South Africa. So we achieved those two. That's fine for us.
The interesting thing. That may be the biggest story in Nigeria, but the biggest story across the world is no Grammy, no AFCON, no lights. I mean, Peter,
Oh, goodness
I
gracious.
don't know.
Oh, but
I don't know.
football fans. But the good thing about the final, I mean, what I'm happy about the final, it was the person I'm really happy about, happy for rather, is Seb Hala. I mean, coming
Yeah,
back from
yeah,
his cancer diagnosis and then winning this tournament, what a
yeah.
fairy tale, brilliant. So happy for him. You can't help but be happy for the Ivorians. The Ivorians were not the best team in this tournament, not by a country mile, but I think they were the ones who tweaked their game when they needed to. So I mean,
Definitely.
they were really, really, really lucky to get this far. Don't forget that they qualified out of the group as one of the best finishing third placed teams in their group. So very, very lucky. But once their fans were angry, they tweaked their game a bit, and then from then on, it was almost smooth sailing for them. So congratulations to Ivory Coast, commiserations to Nigeria, but we lick our wounds and try again in Morocco.
I mean, that's why my man of the tournament is MS Faye, because I think, look, that must have been one difficult phone call he got when he was told, we're going to fire
Yes.
Jean-Louis
Mm.
Gasset, and we have fired Jean-Louis Gasset. We're going to need you to step in
Yes.
as coach.
Yes.
Because what do you think about us? These are players who, first of all, have lost 2 games in a row, have been walloped by Equatorial Guinea. How do you even motivate them to do the best that they can? And how do you arrange the squad so that you bring out the best in them? He got both of them excellently right. I mean,
Absolutely.
they struggled to the final. It was a difficult road to the final. To be fair, penalties at a point, last minute winners, extra time winners at a point. But in the end, look, here
Listen,
we
I mean,
are. Ivory Coast
remember when we started this podcast and we heard that news. That news broke that Ivory Coast had fired their coach. In fact, there were rumors that they were trying to get Hervé Renard, who led them to their last victory, but is now coaching the French female national team. That they were trying to borrow Hervé Renard, and we're like, these guys are like mad. I mean, who actually fires a coach mid-tournament? But hey, there you go. You've got to make the decision, and the decision worked for
exactly.
them. So kudos to them as well. I mean, but like you said, what a great tournament we've had. Goals galore, excellent players, some nice dribbling because I like dribbling. I like to watch
Yeah,
players getting
yeah.
dribbled and get. So it was a brilliant tournament. You couldn't have asked for more. You couldn't have asked for more. And then,
No.
you know,
What actually surprises me, Peter, what actually surprises me is Emilio Nsue holding on to the golden boot. You can imagine he left in the round of 16
yes, he did.
and he still
He
held
did.
on to
He
the golden
did.
boot.
So I mean, so it just goes to show that it wasn't just one player or a couple of players who were scoring the goals. Everybody was involved in goal scoring. So I think that worked very well for me as a tournament. But what a great tournament! I really really enjoyed it. And
Best moments,
ca-
highest moments from the tournament, Peter. Best moments for you.
oh, best moment now. Okay, you've caught me now unawares. But for me, I think best story, more like.
Okay.
I think Cape Verde. I mean, because of what they achieved in Cameroon, and you can just tell that they haven't gone back and sat on their laurels. They have improved and improved. Best moment for me is Bebe's 40-yard free kick. What a goal!
Mm.
What a goal! What a
Mm.
goal! That's my best moment of the competition. So yes, I mean,
Mm.
If Nigeria had won, that would have been my best. But hey, if wishes were horses, huh?
My best moment was there. My best moment was the Ivory Coast win, finally silencing,
Oh, God have
finally
mercy.
silencing.
I walked right into that punch. Thank you very much, Daniel. Thank you. I'll get you
I was
back.
gonna pick something. was gonna pick something totally different, but I
Mm.
had to, I had to slip that in. And this was for South Africa, for Angola, for
Mm.
Ghana, for so
Yeah,
many, for world peace, for
I know.
general world peace
I
and
know.
continental cohesion.
I
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
Well,
It was,
listen,
it was.
we're not the best team on the continent. We're the second best team on the continent, and then every other person follows behind us. So that's all that matters.
No one remembers second best, oh boss. No one remembers second best. I don't. I mean, do you remember the person who was second? If it wasn't you, do you remember the person who was second in your class? I
I
don't even
totally
remember
agree with
silver
you.
medal. Look, but it was a good watch. I
Hmm.
think that for me, I think I look back at the tournament and I think very great stories. I know I've mentioned MS Fire already. I
Hmm.
think Hugo Bruce also did excellently well.
I
South
think so too.
Africa
Yeah.
coming from behind there. I think the entrance of Angola with that attacking fire and that
Yeah.
that that prowess really was such an amazing thing to talk about. Talk about Namibia, talk about Mauritania. And remember, when we got to the quarterfinals, the top five teams on Africa, according to the FIFA World Ranking, were out of the tournament.
Yes, indeed.
All of
Indeed.
the quarterfinalists
Indeed.
from the last
Indeed.
AFCON were out
Yeah.
of the tournament.
Yeah. Nigeria was the remaining highest placed
Yeah,
team at number six, on the
yeah.
continent. So you're very right about that.
I mean, when we started, I know that when we started the tournaments, I expected it to be, the big boys whitewashing
Mm.
everyone else, and I wanted this to be Salah's moment and everything. But looking back at it, I won't have it any other way. It's been a
I, I
great
I enjoyed the fact that
football.
you had minnows in the so-called minnows rather in the knockout stages. I thought it just made for a better tournament. You know,
And they didn't just come and play. They got DR Congo came through to the
exactly
semis.
to the semis. DR Congo did well. Equatorial Guinea. It was brilliant. It was brilliant. And
Yeah.
to actually have a Ghanaian derby in a Nations Cup. I love that. I love that. And somebody said the only thing separating them is the equator. Was that you who said
Exactly.
that? Was that you who said that? I think it was you.
Yeah, the person is very smart. Whoever said it
You
is
know,
very smart.
whatever, whatever.
If I'm going to remind listeners of things that people have said, I remind people that Peter Okwoche said it on this podcast that every time Nigeria beats Ivory Coast, Nigeria wins the AFCON. Well, if they had beaten them, they would have
They'd
won.
have won. Exactly. There you go. They'd have
Peter, look,
won. Yeah,
this was so much fun.
it
Come
was.
back from Nigeria safe.
You will do. Will do. Thank you.
All right, have some amala on me, okay?
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Nice one, bro. Nice.
All right, man. All right, man. All right, man. This is the Africa Football Showdown. That was just the first part of my conversation with Peter Okwoche.
Here with Mimi Fawaz, who is in Abidjan. Mimi, should I be saying I'm sorry? Or should I be saying let's buy funeral cloth? How are you feeling?
I'm feeling fine, Daniel. Thank you very much. I'm here. I was here for the final, as you know. It's now
Yeah.
done and dusted, and we look ahead to next Africa Cup of Nations next year.
I had a whole conversation with Peter about what went wrong, but you seemed quite confident in the setup that the team had. Do you think it came apart too early?
Yeah, I think the Super Eagles did really well, I think, so far in the competition. Let's not forget that they were not one of the favorites coming into the competition. And they really impressed a lot of people with their defensive force at the back, but it just didn't work against Ivory Coast. The players looked tired. There were some tired legs because Jose Peseiro, mostly in this competition, stuck with the same players, just a few tweaks here and there, but it was mostly the same players, except for the final, where there was one or two changes. And whereas Ivory Coast throughout the competition, when Emers Faye came on in from the knockout stages, taking on just 5 days before the Senegal game, he brought in a lot of substitutions. So I don't think his players were as tired as the Nigeria players because he was constantly changing. You would not necessarily have Simona Dingra starting. He was coming on as a substitute. And then we saw in the Latin matches he started. Or Frank Kessie coming on as a substitute in the Senegal match. So he got the tactics right. Unfortunately for Jose Peseiro, he just wasn't able to adapt to that.
let's start by looking at where we both were during that final game. I was in South London trying to produce my friend Simi Jolaosho. Take a look at this.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I've made up my mind, Mimi. There's no party like an Ivorian party. Like I've made up my mind. Yeah, this it's
Yeah,
crazy.
Ivorians, they definitely know how to celebrate. I can tell you that for sure. I'm witnessing it here, and as well in the stadiums.
Yes, and speaking of which, in the stadium, I took the liberty of uploading a clip that you posted on your Instagram. So what was that like?
I have to say it was quite something. I haven't experienced anything like that before. I have to say in an Africa Cup of Nations final, the stadium was 60,000 capacity, and it was just under 59,000 something. I can't remember what it was again. It was literally just a sea of orange throughout the stadium, packed, packed, packed. Obviously, lots of loud noises because you've got so many fans at the same time in the stadium. That atmosphere is something that as I said, I cannot remember experiencing something like that in Africa Cup of Nations final, and I've covered quite a few now.
Mm, mm. Electric atmosphere, really. Now, you've been very close to the Nigerian camp, Mimi. What have they been telling you after that loss?
Well, of course, when you get so close to lifting a trophy, and you can actually see it when they're passing by getting their medals, a lot of the players were disappointed, understandably so, because they were so close, but yet weren't able to lift the trophy. They knew it wasn't the performance that they've put in throughout the competition. They just were not at their best for the final. And also, I feel, and I think many Nigerian fans as well, the tactics of Jose Peseiro, it just didn't work for this match. So it's a somber mood, but they're heading to Nigeria as we speak to get a welcome reception from the presidential villa, getting to the semifinals. Because let's not forget that is still a very big deal. We've all seen from this competition how difficult it has been. It's not been like any other ones that we've seen. The gap between the traditional favorites and the minnows has closed. So for any team that's gone to the final, that's a huge achievement.
Honestly, but hey, it's been a great hosting attempt from Ivory Coast, hasn't it? It's been an exciting tournament altogether.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember, but I did say after Ivory Coast defeated the champions, then Senegal, I said they can be unstoppable because they're given a second lease of life. They thought they were out of the competition in the group stages, finally going through as one of the third best placed teams. And I said, once you've defeated the champions and you go on, you've got that new lease of life. Nothing's going to stop you. As they say, they're not a ghost cannot be afraid. That's a saying that they have. So they just kept building that momentum. It was really a new side, a completely different side that we saw in the group stages, and having that 12th player, the fans, the home support. Let's not underestimate that. I've been in the stadium for their matches, and I see how important it is having them to help keep them going in their matches.
Honestly, that home support that you refer to is, I think, has been the linchpin, really. But the players responded. I feel like for a lot of tournaments that you get very wild home support, it also behoves the players to come to the party. And even at the beginning of the tournament, you could see that it's not just home support that wins it for a team. And Ivory Coast really, really proved it on the pitch. But look, let's talk about other things. The tournament is over now, and one of the biggest winners, I've been checking the numbers, is CAF. If you look at the growth in the social media following alone, you realize that this is a tournament that has been followed internationally. Peter and I were talking about earlier how much coverage you've seen. The CAF president, Patrick Musefe, said about 2 billion people watched this tournament from beginning to end in 173 different countries across the world. But let me wow you with some more numbers, because on TikTok, for instance, they had 5.2 million followers ahead of the tournament. That has grown to 8.5 million. On Instagram, it was from 3.6 million to 4.9 million. And on X, formerly Twitter, it's grown by just 100,000. I don't know how we can call it 100,000 just, but from 2.7 million to 2.8 million. It looks like, Mimi, the consumership of the content is leaning more towards video.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I hadn't seen the numbers until you told me. But what I can say is that even for me on my Instagram page, my numbers have grown as well by a few thousand, just covering the competition. And Twitter, or X as we call it now, I guess hasn't grown as much as I guess for CAF in comparison to the other platforms. But yes, CAF have really focused. We're living in a very digitalized world now, Daniel, aren't we? So CAF have really focused on putting, a lot of work into the digital team. I do know who spearheads the digital team, and they work very, very hard. They've brought a mix of people from around the world, influencers who have been getting involved in their online content. They've also included former legends, former players who are legends obviously now, such as DJ Drogba, Daniel Amokachi, who get to, speak to the players of their countries. They do like nice little features. So that has really gone down very well with the public.
Honestly, and pardon me there. I don't know why I said that. It's consumption. That's the word that I wanted to use. It's the consumption of the video content that has worked. And look, if you look really, there's been a combination of a lot of things. One of my favorite stories that I saw was this chief in Korhogo who said there will be no weddings, there will be no funerals, there will be no social events in Korhogo until the tournament is over. So there's that cultural element to it. There were human stories. I remember watching something on our Instagram page about the barber who works for the Nigerian team, and it's things like that, and of course Amanda Dlamini, the first female commentator in a CAF tournament. I mean, opens the door for people like you, Mimi, to be sitting in the seat in a few
Oh,
years.
trust
I'm
me,
sure.
I'm not a commentator in any way, shape, or form. So I don't think I will be doing live commentary matches. I'll leave that to, I'll leave that to the former players who know a lot more than I do.
For the Dlaminis of the world, no, that's fine. But I mean, those are the kind of stories I feel that really pushed the AFCON. And look, the next tournament in Morocco is going to be great, especially since, Mimi, if you think about it, they won't have as many air travel issues as, a place in West Africa would have.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know necessarily about the air travel issues, but I guess depending on where you're coming from, really, isn't it? Because as we saw in this competition, people have come from various countries around the world and not just in West Africa. But yes, Morocco is another country that's known for being very good at hosting competitions. They've also got very good stadiums. I've been to the country quite a few times. So I think CAF can only build momentum from this competition. The global eyes around the world that have really paid attention to this and just build on that for the next one. And I think they will do that.
Mm, mm. So what would you say would be next for CAF? I mean, you started talking about the Morocco tournaments, but what would you say is the next thing that we should look for?
Well, I mean, if we're looking at Africa Cup of Nations, there's also the Women's Africa Cup of Nations this summer, which will be taking place in Morocco. So that's also another big one, I think, that is worth us as well giving just as much attention as the men's game.
Alrighty, maybe we'll be back for a WAFCON. You never know. There's a man called P.S. Lynch. He's in charge of this whole thing. He would make the decisions. But look, Mimi, definitely an awesome time spending this whole tournament with you, seeing you chill in Ivory Coast, and hopefully we'll be back
Working
with
too.
it. It's always work and play. It's always work and play.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll be back with another big conversation around African football. Thanks so much, Mimi.
Thank you, Daniel. It's been fun.
Alrighty, now this is the Africa Football Showdown. Remember, if you are listening to us on any of our partner stations across the continent, thank you very much for joining us throughout this competition. But this will be the last time that we bring you an episode on radio for now. For now, we would not be broadcasting on our favorite partner stations after the tournament. But you can still follow us on Spotify, on YouTube, on Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcast and your video content. We're on all social media as well. We'll see you next time. My name is Daniel Dadzie. I did this with Mimi Fawaz. Earlier, we had Peter Okwoche. Enjoy your evening.
You don't feel that, man.